よ自分のためらいが引き金になるよ助けて君へと信じて君から漏れた声に揺れる奇跡を祈ろうかだけど悲劇は終わらないほど闇の奥で繰り返す叫び痛み怒り悪意選ばれしブラッドな泣きたくないこれ以上会いたくない燃える愛しさが交差した会いに来て泣きたくて追いかけて誰にも止められないこれは未来それとも夢答えはどこだろうこれが今を試す扉壊すの開けるなどうしよう言葉に刺され余計な哀れみでどうこれになるさ教えて僕へと連れ去って僕にも覚悟さえ足りない店で縛ろうかなのに恐怖に君が逃げたよ許しながら抱きしめる嘆き恨みやせり殺意重ねればブラッドな触れたくない寒いけど会いたくないうの目求め合う存在は会いに来て触れたくて問いかけて誰にも邪魔させない願う未来叶わぬ夢答えはどこだろう願いさえも試す扉壊してあげたらなぜもI wanna say選ばれしブラッドボーイな昨日裏切りの兆しよまとめなリーブ重ねればブラッドエリア戻れるままに眠れ泣きたくないこれ以上会いたくない燃える愛しさが交差した会いに来て泣きたくて追いかけて誰にも止められないこれは未来それとも夢答えはどこだろうこれが今を試す扉壊すの開けらないブラッドな
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a beautiful Saturday night. We're going to be going through the rest of this transcript from yesterday, if you were watching then. To give a brief recap to those who might just be tuning in, wondering what the hell this thing's about. Vic Mignogna is a voice actor for Funimation. He got accused about a bunch of different shit, mainly allegations of sexual harassment, etc. He lost a couple of jobs, was fired from was kicked out of some convention, etc. And he decided to sue them over it, or some people over it. The problem is there's a lot of evidence backing those allegations at this point, meaning that Vic probably did a lot of them. There's that. And there's also the fact that the people he hired are complete baboons who don't know what they're doing. They really don't. And this hearing that his lawyer, Ty Beard, went to is just it's a dumpster fire. It really is. It's a complete trash heap. Ty Beard breaks down entirely. He made a lot of mistakes during this hearing, and it's not a good outcome for him. For those playing the drinking game that I mentioned yesterday, which I advise you guys not to drink, but if you want to make a game of it, here's the thing. Here are the three things you gotta take a shot for. And whenever Ty Beard apologizes for something, take a shot. Whenever Ty Beard uses the phrase rational inference, take a shot. And whenever Ty Beard says prima facie case, prima facie standard, take another shot. Okay, but before we get into that, we got the other lawyer, the one that's not representing Vic, but is pushing the lawsuit to be funded through a fundraiser. He's a little salty. As you may have known, for those watching yesterday, Nick publicly said that he would do a spite stream against yours truly. Yeah, he would go ahead and he'd say that anyone's allowed on, except John Michael Kelly. He's the only person not allowed on. In fact, let's hear Nick say that. All right, let's switch over to here, and I will get that up for you guys. Okay. Let's just go right into it. Here we go.
Have fun with it. Now, if you want the quick background of why we're doing this, it's simple. It's simple. John Michael Kelly has been begging to come on this show because he's got very tough questions for me, and he's going to grill me on things like my relationship with Ty, which I don't know what else there is to say about it or what he thinks I will be hammered into revealing, but I'm not really interested. I'm not super interested in having him come on, flip out on my show for like 2 hours, and then read. It would be funny, but read a bunch of super chats calling him a cuck or whatever. Like, we all know, John, you don't need the internet to tell you over and over again. So I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to talk to him. I don't find him particularly interesting. So I was just casually ignoring him or taking a jab at him here or there on Twitter. But then today he talked about the 2 nobodies I had on instead of him, which, let me be clear, I said if literally nothing else interesting comes up, I'll have you on. And of course, then I talked to Ethan Van Sciver, who wanted to do a show, and Doug TeNapel came on. Well, John called Ethan and Doug, or he said that I didn't do the show with him because instead I had the show with those 2 nobodies. And for whatever reason. So I said, fine, I'll do another show with nobodies like Ethan Van Sciver and Doug TeNapel, or literally any of you, because all of you are more interesting than him.
Wow, Nick. Everyone in the world's allowed on, except John Kelly. He's the only uninteresting person in the world. We're going to single him out, call him special, and ban him because he wants to ask me questions about prior relationships to people that I've financially backing and not telling anyone and not going into details about, like how this guy was has been a family friend and beneficiary to my relatives and possibly myself. Yeah, just little things like that. Also, he likes to make a point and an emphasis that, oh, well, you know, I got Ethan Van Sciver and Doug TeNapel on. These are somebodies. Here's the thing, Nick. They're not anybody's. They are nobodies. I call them that. I stand by it. There's nothing wrong with being a nobody. The fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, most people do not know who Ethan Van Sciver or Doug TeNapel are. I know who they are. I know Doug TeNapel did a cartoon back in the 90s. I know he's done some other works. I also know that Ethan Van Sciver was a comic book artist, was working for mainstream comics like Marvel and DC, before he decided to spurg out and go with his indie route. By the way, have you guys all picked up your copy of Cyberfrogs, that great, awesome comic that was sold to millions and millions of stores. Yeah, I know that comic. It's been 2 years in production, like 2 years of funding and $500,000. You can buy all kinds of merchandise for Cyberfrog, but you can't buy an actual comic for it. At least not since last I checked. Maybe that's changed in like the past couple of months or so, but last I checked, you still got a comic that's been taking years to get out. And that's the guy, that's the guy that Nick wants to promote as a somebody. At least in Doug 10 Nepal's case, he actually does have a library of work. I actually don't really have a problem with the guy. At least not for the most part. Like, there's some things that he said that are disagreeable, but so what? That doesn't make him like shit or anything. I'm just laying the fact out there that he's not a relevant figure at all in the grand scheme of things. And also, there's another point here. Like, Nick is very upset with me. It's very obvious. He does an entire stream just to spite me personally. And he doesn't want me to go on a show to hash things out. And he's already deplatformed me 2 or 3 times, depending on who you're asking. Let's accept that. And I think that I can give a better example than Nick has done. See, Nick, I don't have to go on your show, but I'm going to throw the invitation down to you. You can come on my show. This way, it's going to be this way. There can't be any accusations that I'm clout chasing or just doing it for attention or whatever. Because if you're to come here, nobody's going to watch. I got like what? Maybe at peak viewing, I got 25 viewers. I mean, maybe 50. Who knows? But that can't be considered at all relevant, is it? And on top of that, there's no reason you can't show up and defend yourself. And as you said, these questions I'm asking are just dumb things that are easily answerable, and they're not interesting at all. So you could feel free to answer them right here. I don't see a problem with this. There's everyone gets their entertainment they're looking for. I don't get any unnecessary, undue attention or praise. And you can come here and explain why this is a great idea to fund this GoFundMe campaign with a lawyer who argues that likes and retweets contribute to a conspiracy to take someone down because they shared a post on social media or they were part of a Discord server and other dumb arguments like that. And you can ask and we can even get into like more ins and outs of it. So, with that said, there's also another interesting thing from the stream, because I'm not going to focus this on too much. The focus on the stream is going to be on the rest of the TCPA hearings. But what is Nick talking about this? Is Nick talking about this? Let's see. Let's go to right here. 758.
Now, let me address a couple things that just some common questions I've seen so far in the chat and on Twitter. Yes, apparently there is a copy of the transcript that was purchased by, I believe, a GoFundMe set up by the Threadnought because it's its own thing or something like that. But there's a GoFundMe set up there, and they've purchased a transcript. From what I understand, it is likely ostensibly a legitimate copy of the transcript, but I don't know. I will get a copy of the transcript, and we will probably go through it at some point next week. But yeah, I'm not going to use their copy. I'll get my own copy. So that's where we're at with that. But someone asked if it's legitimate, if it's correct. I don't know. I haven't read the copy of the transcript that they have. I have no reason to assume it not be legitimate. I don't think they would be dumb to like actually edit something out. I believe they watermarked it and added some hashtags to be very funny or something. And that's fine. You know, I don't really care. But yeah, as far as like editing the content of the transcript, I don't think that that's a true thing. So, right?
Oh, so Nick is just not even going to bother commenting at all when this bombshell of a transcript comes out and makes Ty look semi-fucking... let me rephrase that. It makes Ty look completely fucking retarded. That's really weird, and he spends the entirety of the stream talking about all this other shit under the sun. But not once is he going to go into the details of the transcript. It's almost like this stream that Nick put on to spite John Michael Kelly. It's like, I mean, like, I might be thinking about this a little too much, guys, but it's almost like he put this stream on as a deliberate distraction to get away from this transcript that the Threadnought and Greg Duchette paid for to get out there and wanted everyone to know what was in it. Yeah, but that, my guys, I gotta cool this down. I can't, I'm thinking too much about this. Nick's an honest guy who didn't do nothing. He's a great shining example of a beacon of truth, and no, it's fucking obvious what Nick's doing here. Nick got blown the fuck out with the transcript release, and he has to make sure nobody pays attention to it. Because Nick is also raising funds for the GoFundMe still. Yeah, that's right. He's still actively pushing for it. Like, I mean, I heard that Nick was actually going to stop pushing the funding of it because he said, I'm not sure this thing's going to make it past Friday. That's what I heard. I'm not 100% certain that's the exact quote. But no, that's not. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong one. Give me a second. Let me just go to his timeline real quick. I'll just grab it from here. Yeah, here it is. Like, we get to, but no, Nick is still pushing for more donations. And we don't even know if Vic Mignogna, the guy that this is for, like, if you are a fan of Vic, you're supposed to be supportive of him and his efforts in this dispute that he's turned to the law for. It's his decision if he wants to go through the appeals process or not. And Vic Mignogna might not want that. Vic might instead want to say, you know what, we tried, we did our best, let's let this thing boil down. And there's a good reason for him to do that, because if this goes to appeals, it's going to become it's going to be everywhere. It's going to be something that's going to be put on a lot of databases, a lot of places, and it's going to be referenced in future cases. And all the sordid details out there will become even more widely known than it has already become as a result of this case. But here's Nick saying, also, just a reminder that the GoFundMe is in full grift mode. From midnight Thursday through midnight Sunday night, the five highest donors will get a signed Vic print as a thank you grift from me. Like, it's just such blatant pandering and emotional manipulation he's using here. Oh, you get a free signed copy. But I like the slip here. I like that little slip right at the end there. You get a thank you grift from me. Should it be Vic Mignogna who's thanking these people, not Nick, who just takes all the benefits of having this fundraiser and having this surge of popularity, being the Vic guy, the guy who's standing for Vic? Shouldn't it be Vic who's being thanked? The guy who has to pay up the ass for Jamie Marshy's legal fees and is going to have to pay up the ass for the other legal fees, the other defendants real soon? Doesn't Nick, honestly, yeah, Nick, I'm glad you added that little thing at the end there. That's really telling, and that's really all that people need to know about you. Moral of the story here, don't trust a lawyer, especially not one with a YouTube channel. Okay. Well, let me rephrase that. Just don't blindly trust a lawyer, or don't blindly trust a YouTuber. Just for the pedants in the audience who want to take issue with that. All right. So let's get back to the case that happened on Friday, the 6th of September. That was a couple of weeks ago, I believe, at this point. So I'm going to read over the last few things that I read from last time, just to keep the context in there. And if you think it gets better for Ty, a little spoiler alert, it doesn't. It doesn't get better for Ty. In fact, I think it gets worse. So let's go back to, let's see, which line did I want? Yes, this one here. Let's start on page 93, line 11, and we'll continue from here. Just to recap the earlier parts of this. And before I start this, there's something I do have to mention. There were a total of 4 lawyers that showed up to defend Vic. Now, I want you to keep that in mind if you go ahead and watch the previous stream, if you read the transcript itself, and as we continue reading through this through this transcript. Keep in mind, Vic had 4 lawyers in the bench. That should tell you 2 things. The first one being Ty really wanted to amp up the cost for some reason. And the second thing being, they were of no help, except for this outside counsel guy. So, like, you had Ty and the outside counsel and 2 lawyers who were just quiet throughout the proceedings thus far. The other thing being that despite having these 4 people there, Ty still couldn't prosecute a competent case here. This is just sad. Like, it's just pathetic on multiple levels. And it really should be telling a lot of people, hey, you know what? I think this whole thing, I think these 2 guys that are pushing this thing, I think they're full of shit. So yeah. Let's get into it. All right, this is the court. That would be Judge Shupp, referred to as the court in these transcripts. And he's talking with Mr. Beard. That would be Mr. Percy Tyrone Beard. Fear the Beard, guys. And let's read. Judge says, let's do defamation for her. Her being Rial. Ty responds, all right, yes, sir. Judge says, I mean, it's almost 12 o'clock. Ty responds, yes, all right. So we have the following defamatory tweets that from Miss Rial that we can start with. Okay, in response to Vic, and I could put that on the screen if you want to see it or whatever, but she's responding to comments about Vic and Vic is named. She says the truth will come out now, all of it. She says, you know, and the context here is very clear about sexual assault allegations, that that is in Funimation's motion to dismiss, as well as ours. In addition, we have her saying, let's see, and just so we're clear, he is the legal definition of harassment. Harassment is governed by state laws that is generally defined as a course of act or conduct which annoys, threatens, intimidates, alarms, or puts a person in fear of their safety. She later goes on to say harassment laws, which vary by state, are defined as a course of conduct which annoys, threatens, intimidates, alarms, or puts another person. Okay, that's saying sort of the same thing. Here, this is a really good one. There were investigations conducted by multiple companies with evidence, testimony, and truth. There were dozens of men and women who participated. The companies don't have to share that information with you because you're not an attorney or law enforcement. There has been no evidence whatsoever from any of the private parties that is the case. Again, that was attached not just to our documents. In Chuck Huber's affidavit or sworn declaration, he testifies that she made statements, and I'll get to it right here. In Chuck Huber's affidavit, which I remind the court we're supposed to take as at this stage as truthful, you know. I mean, so he says Funimation employees, including Jamie Marshy, Monica Rial, and Michelle Speck, have advised me more than once since February 19th that criminal charges are coming against Vic. In response, I encourage them to help these alleged underage victims of rape and sexual assault come forward. When asked to provide specifics of these allegations, they couldn't or refused to do so. Alright, we have the real devastating evidence, which is Mr. Slatosh with Kamea-Khan. In Slatosh's affidavit, here it is. I've got it. No, I don't. In Slatosh's affidavit, he flatly states that Rial and Toye verbally urged them to dump Vic Mignogna. They threatened him with having the other voice actors pull off convention. They said they were criminal charges pending. They told him that he would be charged before the convention. And he said, okay, I'll drop him. And he dropped Mr. Mignogna. Now, he breached his contract. There was a dispute between Mignogna and Kamea-Khan, and they got it worked out. Mr. Mignogna goes back to the convention, but under a number of limitations that were not imposed by the other voice actors. Rial did more or less pull out. She wound up going to another location, and several other voice actors canceled. Slatosh testifies to all of that, and in addition, we have text messages from Mr. Toye that say all those very things. And we have Rial and Toye, the voice conversation that he had with Rial. He testifies that Toye was on the line behind her, adding to the conversation. So Slatosh establishes a conspiracy between the two of them, torturous interference, and he also testified that they urged him not to do business with Vic ever again. So I find it curious that we have actual evidence and testimony that they did it. And opposing counsel says, well, you know, but there's no proof that they did it to any others. I believe as a rational inference, take a shot, guys. that this was a pattern of conduct. That is just the only one we were able to turn over before the discovery stay kicked in. Oh, forgot to mention, he's mentioned prima facie case before. Take a shot for that as well. In addition, Real exchanged something like 25 emails with Funimation after Mignogna had already been terminated, discussing things like, what to say, what to do. The emails were very, 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 I'm sorry if apologizes to the judge, take a shot. I'm sorry you are going through this. This kind of, oh wait, no, take back a shot. He's not apologizing to the judge, my bad. He's just relaying what Real is saying. I'm sorry you are going through this kind of stuff. Very curious conduct for someone who is alleged to be an independent contractor. And, oh, by the way, Funimation did not attach a copy of her contract. They just simply say, well, she's an independent contractor. Well, independent contractor status is a question of facts and law. Judge asks, let me ask you this. Do you have a breach of contract case against Funimation? Tai responds, do we have? No, we don't. Judge says, or do you have a breach of contract case against the Comic-Con? Tai responds, it's Kamea-Con, and Judge corrects himself saying Kamea-Con. Tai responds, yes, Your Honor, we would have. Judge says, but why didn't you? Tai responds, but we worked it out. Judge says, so you didn't have any damages? Tai responds, well, we did have damages. Judge says, oh. Tai says, we did have damages. Judge says, and were you compensated for those? Tai says, no, but they had to hire extra security. Judge says, but you conceded to that. So you entered into the contract with them and conceded to that. So how are you damaged if you chose that? Tai says, well, that was an amicable settlement between the parties in lieu of litigation. We're not saying that's the only way we were damaged by them. Now, here's the thing here. The judge flat out says right here that because he conceded to that, there's not really a case for damages that Tai can really make based on the additional hiring of security. That's something that Vic Mignogna agreed to, and it's not something you could say, well, I was damaged by something that I consented to having done. And Tai doesn't really make a good case for it. He just admits that it was an amicable settlement between the parties in lieu of litigation. So instead of going through civil procedure or whatever, they worked out the deal. This is a really bad thing for when you're trying to argue for torturous interference. It doesn't work that way. And I believe there's case law that backs this up. We'll be getting into that in another stream, probably tomorrow night. So judge says, okay, how else were you damaged by the interference with an existing contract? Tai says, we were damaged because multiple conventions canceled him after, and judge says, that's not an existing contract. Tai says, well, here's the thing. They have, at the very least, if the court would indulge me, I think it's fair to say that they attempted to torturously interfere. They attempted to. They said they lied about the fact that he was a predator. They lied about the fact there was going to be criminal charges. They threatened the convention order with persuading other voice actors to pull out. Toye even had offered a $25,000 sponsorship and threatened to pull it out. And of course, he ultimately did. Judge says, there has to be a current contract in place. Tai says, right. Judge says, okay. Tai says, Mr. Mignogna testified. Judge cuts him off. Okay, hold on. So there has to be a current contract in place. These people had to get together and interfere with that contract. Tai says, correct. Judge says, which contract did they interfere with that were in place at that time? Tai responds, at this time, they interfered with the Kamea-Con contract. All we can do is infer that if they did it in one case, they would have done it in others. Now, this is where Tai starts to really trip up here, and you'll see why in a sec. Judge says, would have is not a cause of action. Tai replies, Your Honor, again. Judge adds, they didn't. If they would have means they didn't do it. Tai says, Your Honor, if somebody walks up to you and tried to hit you, Judge cuts him off. But if I rob a bank and they don't catch me, or they do catch me, they can't charge me for I would have robbed some other banks. Fair, and Ty acknowledges fair. But Your Honor, if somebody walks up to you with a baseball bat and takes a swing at you and misses, isn't it fair to infer that they might do it again, or that they might do it to other people? Judge responds, but I don't have a cause of action on what they might do. Ty continues, Your Honor, you don't have to do that. All we have to do is produce the minimum quantum of evidence necessary to support a rational inference. What you've got to find is that it is rational of me to say if they tried to interfere with Kamehacon, they might well have done so with the other conventions, and I'll point to those conventions that canceled him as evidence of that. Judge replies, but that can't be prospective contracts. That's not a current contract. Ty says, no, Your Honor. Mr. Mignogna testified that in many cases he did have contracts with them, verbal contracts. Judge replies, that's what I'm asking you. Ty says, well, that... Judge cuts him off. Stop. Sorry. All right, Ty did apologize there to the judge. Do take a shot. Judge says, I asked you what contracts were in place that they interfered with. You said Kamehacon. Ty says, that's one. Judge says, okay. Ty says, there were multiple other conventions. Mr. Mignogna does not remember specifically which conventions. Now, this is another weird argument here, and I think this is honestly the worst argument here. Why are you arguing for losses that the plaintiff cannot recall, let alone specifically state, yeah, this contract was broke here, on this date, they canceled me here. Instead, they're going off of Vic's testimony, and Vic specifically says, I don't remember which conventions kicked me out and which ones didn't over this. That's a really weird flex, I gotta say, of Ty trying to push that through. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just, it gets even worse, though. But he says there were, again, in his affidavit, his testimony is supposed to be taken as truthful. Some he had contracts with, some he did not. He was coming back and all this kind of stuff. Judge responds, and how much money did he lose on all those? And Ty says, oh boy, that I can answer. So Mr. Mignogna, it's hard to give you an exact number. Judge says, well, you said boy, I can answer that one. I thought you were giving me an exact answer. Judge coming back with the burns. For those who missed the last stream, yeah, this judge, he does not respect Ty at all. He's treating him just as he deserves to be treated, as someone who's really failed to do his homework, really failed to present a compelling case, and is fumbling and bumbling like an idiot. Like, worse than one of my streams, I'll tell you that much. Ty says, no, that's not it, Your Honor. Judge says, oh, I was looking forward to it. Ty says, well, he anticipated, and I'll be happy to go through the methodology. This is not mere speculation. Okay, he anticipated that it was 5 conventions that were canceled. He lost $30,000. Judge says, did he have a contract with them? Ty says, some of them did. Some of them he did. Judge asks, which ones? Ty says, I don't know. He said in his affidavit that some he had, all of them, they had handshake agreements for him to appear. This wasn't a deal where, he had appeared at a lot of these conventions over and over. So in many cases it was, hey Vic, we want you to be there, are you going to show up? He said yes. They announced him. That's a binding agreement. They incurred. There's offer, acceptance, and consideration. Will you come? Yes, I will. The consideration is we'll promise to pay you your airfare. We'll promise to pay We'll promise to pay you some minimum amount, and we incur expenses to announce that you're at the convention. So this is another weird part of this argument, and I don't understand why Ty's making this. Like, okay, so an oral agreement between Vic and the convention. They basically call him up and ask him if he wants to show up. Vic casually says, yes, I'll show up. Yeah, there's specific elements there for a contract, but the problem is there's no expansive details or anything about terms and conditions of said contract. There's just an agreement, and there's no clause or anything that specifically says neither party shall withdraw their end of the bargain. Neither party shall cancel or something like that. So I don't get why Ty would try to float this argument. At the same time, he can't name a single convention other than Kamehacon, which is standing on shaky ground as it is. But beside that, he's arguing in this instance for other cons, not Kamehacon. This is just a really bizarre and weird thing for Ty to be arguing, even as incompetent as he is. So, continuing from Ty. So yes, there were very definitely contracts, but Your Honor, 5 of these conventions he estimates that he would have lost. He would have made a minimum of $20,000. Oh, we just went from 3,000, 30,000 to 20,000. That's a kind of a steep drop there. That's kind of weird. Ty continues. Now, if we apply the averages to the conventions, he still went to. If we applied the averages to the conventions he still went to, that number would have been higher, like 30,000. The 7 or 8 other ones that canceled him were smaller. He estimates about 5,000. Again, here are the conventions he had attended. Okay, Kamehacon he made $37,000. Savannah, 13,000. Central Pennsylvania, 5,000. Puerto Rico, 11. Bach Anime, 5. Anime Matsusuri, 30. Super World Con, 5. Ireland, 12. Liberty, 14. Jacksonville, 12. And Bubba Fest, 17. Now, if he made that much money at the conventions that he went to despite all this damage to his reputation, if he had a dozen others cancel, you're talking about very serious economic harm. And we've got these people doing it legally. We've got testimony the court is required to accept as truthful. And we've got actual copies of the text messages where they're doing that. Now, we managed to mitigate our loss in the case of Kamehacon. But the fact is they tried to destroy his business with one convention. It is entirely rational, totally rational, to infer that he probably did it to others, because we have circumstantial evidence those conventions canceled him. In addition, the convention owner, and again, Mr. Mignogna testified to this, the convention owners told him, we're canceling you because of all these allegations, and blah, blah, blah. So they didn't, Mr. Mignogna had, Judge interrupts, do you have affidavits from those conventions? Ty responds, no, discovery. The judge responds, what do you mean discovery? Ty answers, there's a discovery stay the minute they filed their TCPA. Judge replies, well, how did you get affidavits from anybody in this case then? Ty says, got them before. Judge says, no, you didn't, because you did one on September 2nd. Ty responds, Your Honor, these conventions were not willing to come out. Judge says, hold on. You did an affidavit or statement, whatever, unsworn statement, or whatever it was on September 2nd. So you were able to get affidavits from people, and you actually notarized some affidavits after discovery. Ty says, obtaining affidavits. Judge says, that's the question I asked you. Did you get an affidavit from any of the... Ty says, no, we did not. Judge says, okay. And you said no because of discovery. Ty responds, right. I said because the discovery stay kicked in and we couldn't go to third parties that we didn't know. Plus, these conventions aren't all... Judge responds, what is that? You can't get an affidavit from... Ty says, when they filed their motion to dismiss, a discovery stay came down. Judge replies, can they not get an affidavit during the discovery stage to support their response? Ty says, no. And then Mr. Villani, the lawyer for Funimation, says, of course they can, Your Honor. Judge says, okay. Villani adds, which is exactly what Sean did. Sean being Sean Lamoni, representing Monica Rial and Ron Toye. Ty's response, Your Honor, Judge says, you can't get, how do you, Ty adds, here's the thing, we couldn't depose them. Judge says, I didn't ask you about a deposition, did I? And yeah, that's, again, the burns. Ty says, you did not. Let me back up, if I may. We did not get affidavits because those parties were not friendly to us. Judge says, okay, don't make up some other excuse like it's in the rule somewhere. Now, see, this is like the second, third, fourth, fifth. I don't know how many times he's done this before, but this is yet another instance where Ty tries to pull a fast one on the judge, and he tries to bullshit his way through the case, but he's not good at it. The judge sees right through him, and he calls him on it, he pins him down, and he gets him to admit that he's a fucking retard, essentially. Like, this is some, I imagine, according to people and witnesses that were there at the event, a lot of people laughed at Ty at various parts. I imagine this is one of those times where people just laugh Ty right in the courtroom. And yeah, this is not good on Ty. This is really bad. Like, really, really bad. Ty says, I got confused. I misunderstood. I got myself rattled. Sorry about that. Okay. Alright. That was a big apology. Take 5 shots for that one. Judge says, okay. Is that all the evidence you have with torturous interference with existing contract and torturous interference with prospective business relationships? Ty says, I believe so. Let me check real quick. Let's see. We went over Slatosh's declaration, the verbal statements threatening, text messages, the conversation, the conventions that canceled him. Yes, I think that's it. We have actual attempts to interfere, and we have circumstantial evidence of a dozen conventions canceling him. Judge says, okay, those are both dismissed. I have not dismissed defamation yet, and I have not dismissed conspiracy, because that may be wrapped up in defamation. Does she have vicarious liability? And Ty says, I think she does. Judge says, okay, who is her employee? Ty says, Funimation. Judge says, is her employee? And Ty answers, no, I'm sorry. Take a shot. My mistake. Funimation has a vicarious liability problem. She does not. Oh boy. Well, seems Ty forgot again that vicarious liability doesn't work if you're employed or contracted by a company. It's if you employ someone on your behalf or contract someone on your behalf. This is really bad. Ty says, okay, judge says, am I not being clear? Ty responds, no, I'm not listening, Your Honor. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, I think that... oh, man. People gave this guy $250,000. $250,000 to represent this Vic Mignogna. $250,000. Judge responds, it helps if you do. Yes, I agree. I don't know, guys. Does that count an apology? I'm not going to count this as an apology because I already gave 5 shots to the last one. Judge says, okay, so I'll deal with Rial's defamation and civil conspiracy later. How about Toye? Ty says, Toye, okay. Judge says, let's deal with his torturous interference with an existing contract, not a future contract. Not one that you just think you have. Let's talk about a real one. Ty says, well, he attempted to interfere with Kamea-Con, as I just stated, because he did it in text messages as well as verbal. So we've got that. We've got text messages for that. He texted that, charges were going to be filed. Vic was a criminal predator, and we got all that. That is solid. We also have the testimony of a convention owner that he told him that charges would be filed. He's a sexual predator. He threatened the con owner with pulling out $25,000 of sponsorship money, and so forth. So there is him trying to do it. Judge says, and your guy went to Kamea-Con and got paid? Yes. Okay. He incurred additional expense. Any other torturous interference with existing contracts? Ty says, other than just a rational inference, take another shot, that he did it at one. And we had a bunch of them cancel on us. That he likely did at others. I mean, judge says, who else canceled? Ty responds, there were 12, at least a dozen. It's in our original. Judge says, I thought y'all just said it was one, right? Ty says, no, Your Honor. Judge says, I'm talking about, didn't you say one was Kamea-Con, and he went ahead and did it, but okay. So show me those contracts. Let's see them. Ty says, well, Mr. Mignogna testified that a lot of them are verbal agreements, and we don't have any written agreements. Judge asks, how much were they for? Ty says, well, it doesn't work that way. Judge says, okay. Ty says, I'm sorry. Take a shot. I'm trying to answer your question, Your Honor. Judge says, okay. Ty says, what happens is Mr. Mignogna is guaranteed a modest amount of money, like $3,000 or $4,000. Judge says, exactly how much does he say he's guaranteed? I want to know his evidence, not yours. Ty says, it depends on the convention. Judge asks, what does his affidavit say? Ty says, his affidavit doesn't speak to his guarantee. It simply says that he had contracts to appear. Judge asks, so it doesn't have an amount of damages? Ty says, no, it doesn't have that. No, it does have that. Judge says, okay, how much? Ty replies, all right, what I told you early, we have 150 different, 5 big ones, and then Judge says, I don't care which ones he got paid on. I want to know what he's going to get paid on these. Ty says, I understand. I'm talking about the 5 that canceled. Based on what he earned at the ones he did show up, he estimated at least $100,000 on the 5 the big ones. There were at least 7 smaller ones, and he estimates he would have made at least $5,000 on that. So that's $135,000 on the dozen or so that canceled. And that's not just speculation. That is an average of the conventions he's been to this year. Ty is someone who likes to brag and say he's good with math, and logic and other things like that. Ty, that is literally speculation. Like, you can make a guess as to what the average would be had he attended those conventions, but it's still a speculative, educated guess that has very, very little factors, and it's just looking at conventions he's been to before. And if you paid attention to the base idea of what Ty had put forward, those conventions varied in range as to how much money Vic Mignogna made. So this really is just speculation, and Ty's just bullshitting. And again, Ty isn't good at bullshitting. And Judge responds, do you have any evidence from those people from the conventions that say they dismissed him or they canceled a contract with him because of interference by another person? Ty replies, no, Your Honor, but the Texas Supreme Court has been real clear that circumstantial evidence is often required to prove both conspiracy and torturous interference. In fact, even in cases where the business says, I wasn't interfered with, torturous interference can be found. Because, who is going to come out and say, yeah, they threatened me, and I went along with it? Judge says, a lot of people probably would, but Ty says, well, Judge says, do we have information that, because these aren't the only 3 people that post on the internet. These aren't the only 3 people that post stuff on the internet. Ty says, correct. And I assume there's other people that have posted stuff on the internet regarding your client? Ty says, yes. Judge says, okay. How do we know it's their post that caused this? Ty says, because, well, number 1, if you're talking torturous interference, we have him actually doing it. And we still on torturous interference? Yes. Okay. We have him actually doing it. Toye? Right. Real as well. We're done with Real. Okay. Yeah, but I don't know how to. We're on Toye. Right. We have Ron Toye actually trying to do it. Judge says, and didn't do it, though. Wasn't successful. Right. Okay. Only because the parties were able to work out an arrangement. But again, it's totally rational. Totally rational to infer that if he would interfere with one convention, why on earth wouldn't he interfere with the others? I feel like we're being held to a preponderance of the evidence standard in a TCPA hearing, Your Honor, and that's not the standard. Judge replies, I don't think you have any evidence is your problem. You want no standard. That's the problem. Burned, savaged, destroyed. I don't know how does Ty ever recover from that? Like, even if this quote right here, even if like Ty had a better outcome than he did at this court hearing, even if that's even if he was to get the remaining 5 claims against the defendants approved to go to trial, this quote is going to haunt him forever and ever. That's what's going to happen. Ty responds, Your Honor, with due respect, the evidence is Christopher Slatosh's testifying. The evidence is Christopher Slatosh testifying in an affidavit that he did it and producing the text message showing him. Okay, but he wasn't damaged. Ty says, I understand. Well, I disagree with that, actually. Judge says, okay. Ty says, he was damaged. He just wasn't fully damaged. He's had to pay for additional security. He had a less desirable location away from all the other voice actors. There were. Judge replies, what's the value of that? Ty says, I have no idea, but he was damaged. Also, just as an aside, again, Ty's reiterating an argument that he alluded to earlier about how Vic agreeing to pay for security counts as damages. The judge already said that Vic conceded to that. Doesn't really make it damages. But there's also another aspect to this about this nebulous thing about having to have a location away from the other voice actors. Yeah, I'm curious as to how that counts as damages in any context. Like, even if someone forced him in a box and forced him away from the others, there's not a good argument here that Ty is making to justify that, which is what the judge is asking for. It's a really odd thing for Ty to be doing, making these claims about damages with this thing or that thing, and not having his specifics lined up so that we can most effectively argue this point when it comes to torturous interference. So, yeah, Ty's really, really bad. Even if you agree with Ty, even if you agree with Nick on, okay, they have a case, they have a good case, and this should go to court. There is no way you can argue that the positions that Ty is making here are in any way competently handled. There's no way to get to that conclusion unless, I don't know, maybe you have or give yourself brain damage. I can't really, and even then, I don't even think someone in that condition would go ahead and say, yeah, this is definitely, Ty looks really good here. I don't see it. I mean, you asked the question, and he was damaged. It's hard at this point in the case, without the ability to do discovery. I don't know. I'm going to have to depose those convention owners eventually. And also, act on our motion to compel, because Rial and Toye have also engaged in very serious discovery abuse that, when they stay kicked in, I assured we probably couldn't enforce that. But there was a motion to compel discovery that was filed long before they filed their TCPA motion. At the end of the day, we have Mignogna testifying very specifically as to what his damages were. We have him testifying that the conventions were canceled. We have him testifying that, in fact, there were contracts. At this stage of the game, according to the Khan case, where the court is required to assume all those things to be true. If all those things are true, we've got Mignogna having serious damage, and we've got conventions that he had contracts with canceling him. On top of that, you have slash every time, I swear, I can't pronounce things that are foreign. I just can't do it. You have Slatosh saying he interfered. So I mean, are we not going to survive a TCPA motion because I can't get a convention owner to admit that they canceled Vic Mignogna because Toye and Rial pressured them? Maybe. Yes. Oh, that's a very, very subtle way of saying, yeah, this charge is thrown out. Ty responds, well, I would submit that's not appropriate standard, Your Honor. Judge responds, okay. What else do you have on Toye? Ty says, well, I've got about 300 defamatory tweets. Opposing counsel has an interesting argument. They gripe that we didn't include all the tweets, but then they turned around and griped that we included too many. I'm not sure what the point is. Judge responds, no, and I know all those tweets are there. That's why I have not ruled on the defamation of either of them. Tai says, "Oh, I'm sorry. So you're talking strictly about the torturous interference?" "Yes, either of them." "Okay." Tai says, "I think that summarizes it." Judge says, "Okay. Do you all have any responses to torturous interference argument?" Lemoyne responds, "The Khan case." Judge asks, Judge says, both Rial, both Rial, because I haven't ruled on the defamation of Rial. I'll do that later. But the torturous interference with Toye. Now, he's saying this guy had all of these contracts with a handshake, and Lemoyne says, so there's a couple of arguments. One, you have to prove that the terms of the contract were. You can't just say, I had a contract. Lemoyne is correct in that. Two, you've got to prove what the damage was. Lemoyne is 2 for 2. And there, you still have a causation problem. And 3, you still have a causation problem. The Khan case is exactly the question the court asked, which is why didn't you get an affidavit from those guys saying they did it? And Khan even talks about proximity doesn't mean causation. Just because a statement was heard on this day and they terminate it a week later or even a day later doesn't mean that's what caused it. As the court pointed out, everybody was writing about this in that time frame. So to say Mr. Toye tweeted something that means that that had to be the reason the convention terminated is kind of ludicrous. But more to the point, they're the ones that pled the specific conventions. They said Mr. Toye tweeted on those days, and those conventions terminated. They're the ones that had the evidence that that's a good faith basis to make this argument. Judge responds to Lemoyne, "Let me ask you this, then. Are you claiming that Toye actually reached out to these convention people to interfere with the contract, or are you saying that the statements they made on the internet was interference?" Tai says, "I'm saying that he actually contacted them to interfere." Okay, I made a mistake there. Judge was saying that to Tai, apparently, not Lemoyne. So, continuing. Judge says, in response to what Tai said here, okay. Tai continues, "The stuff he made on the internet are defamatory, but okay." Judge speaking, "Then show me the evidence that he contacted any of these people." Tai replies, "Okay, as I said, we know he contacted one of them." Judge responds, "Okay, that was the existing contract." Tai says, "That's correct." Judge responds, "Okay." And, Your Honor, I'm being asked to provide proof when we're in a prima facie environment. Again, guys, take a shot for those playing the drinking game. Look, if I walk up to you and try to steal money out of your pocket, and you catch me, all right, and then later on I'm in the room, I'm hovering in the background, and money disappears from your pocket, it's a rational inference, take a shot, that I took your money. It may not be the only explanation, and it may not even be the most reasonable explanation, but it's rational. That's what we're talking about here. We've got two people that overtly attempted to interfere with a contract. And legally speaking, at this stage of the case, that is established because we have the testimony that they did it. In addition, we have Toye's text messages. Judge responds, "But you don't have any evidence that they called any of these other people?" Tai responds, "No, I'm drawing a rational inference." Take another shot for another rational inference. Judge replies, "Anybody could have called them." Tai says, "Agreed, but we know they did." Judge says, "No, you don't. You don't know if they called any of these other people." Tai says, No, I'm sorry. Gotta take a shot here because Tai just apologized again to the judge. Rephrase, we know they called at least one. Judge responds, okay. Tai says, if they called one, it's rational. It's rational to infer, that counts, take a shot, that they called others. Judge responds, I think you need some evidence of it. So those are both dismissed. Okay, Funimation. For those keeping track of at this stage in the hearing, how many cases were dismissed? all 4 of Marshy's claims dismissed, and 2 of both Ron Toye's and Monica Rial's claims also dismissed. So 8 of the 17 claims at this point, gone. Continuing. Villani says, is that a question for me, or Villani is the lawyer for Funimation? Ty says, Your Honor, did you rule on defamation? Judge says, I did not rule on the defamation for Rial or Toye, and I may not do that today. Ty says, okay. Judge says, I need to read some more. I need to read some of this stuff. Go ahead. Villani says, may I begin? Judge responds, you may. I do have, hold on. Judge says, it's my understanding that Funimation has 2 tweets. Villani says, yes, that is step 1. I want to first confirm, as the court has done with the other motions filled by defendants here, as to what it is we are talking about. We are talking about 2 tweets that were published on February 11th, 2019, and Judge interrupts. It didn't really say much other than that they're letting him go. I didn't understand it. Did he continue with finish the season and then he was let go? Villani says, my understanding, well, the answer to that question is, I don't know. That's a weird thing for Villani not to know. I mean, I know the answer to that question. So I'm confused that Funimation's lawyer didn't know the details of this. So I guess he kind of loses points here. Judge says, oh, okay. I didn't understand by reading that whether he was able to continue with that season or he was let go immediately. Villani says, I read that as saying he was let go immediately, recast, he was replaced in that role. Judge says, okay. Villani says, but so those are the 2 communications we are talking about. Obviously, I did confirm in Mr. Mignana's deposition that those were the only Funimation statements that he is suing about, and this is an expert from his testimony. Let me go through the parts that we've already covered and get to the meat of the argument. With respect to the defamation argument, Your Honor, those are the particular elements that we've already talked about. At the outset, it's fair to say that the statement about Vic in the first tweet of February 11th, 2019 is a truthful statement. An update on the Vic Mignogna situation. He does not deny, nor can he deny, because he pleads it in his first amended petition, that there was an investigation, and that he was recast, and that he was told that Funimation will not be engaging in the future productions, and that's admitted at paragraph 21 of their petition. I think that he testified at his deposition that there is nothing untruthful about that first tweet. The second tweet is another true statement. That part of Funimation's core mission is to celebrate the diversity of the anime community and to share our love for this genre and its positive impact on all. We do not condone any kind of harassment or threatening behavior being directed at anyone. That particular tweet, Your Honor, does not mention Vic Mignogna, and it is a truthful statement made by Funimation at or about the same time it's tweeted about Mr. Mignogna as being recast. Now, for that reason, he hasn't met the first element of his defamation claim to show that an untruthful statement was made about him. Your Honor, the case law we cited means versus big name company that I'm not going to be able to pronounce out of Austin qualifies as a defamatory statement, should be derogatory, degrading, somewhat shocking, and contain elements of disgrace. There is nothing about that February 11th set of tweets that does that. In fact, Your Honor, I'm going to put those tweets in context. We submitted evidence to the court, including Mr. Barretto's affidavit, which was part of the original TCPA motion, which talks about what was Funimation's mindset when it published its tweets about him. For purposes, inaudible, their defamation by implication argument. If the court finds as a matter of law that there was possibly some defamation by implication here, what we've put before the court is evidence that we did not act with malice in making any sort of defamation by implication. That malice standard has been talked about. It's not the attitude towards it. It is the focus of a malice is on the defendant's attitude towards the truth, not its attitude towards the plaintiff. We didn't engage in any, pardon me. Mr. Mignogna has not put any evidence before the court of any actual malice on the part of Funimation. There is no evidence in the record of our state of mind. He didn't take a deposition. He didn't engage in any discovery. No evidence whatsoever. So in terms of the playing field for the actual malice inquiry on Funimation, assuming the court credits their defamation by implication argument, there is no evidence there other than what Funimation put in the record about it, which was to let me back up. First of all, there is no malice as to the first tweet because it is true that we did have an investigation and he was fired after that investigation. With respect to the second tweet, we put evidence in the record of the company's state of mind that the purpose of additional tweet was to respond to the continuous heated back and forth among anime fans about the plaintiff and was an effort to encourage stability in the anime community. Judge respond. Oh, okay, and just to clarify a bunch of that legal stuff, because that was a lot of stuff that the lawyer said. Firstly, actual malice is the state of mind of a person being accused of defamation in which they either knowingly lie or they have severe doubts about the truthfulness of their statement. Which means that in order to get someone defamation, you have to show evidence that their state of mind was that they were lying about someone, essentially. And what he's saying is that they didn't have evidence for that. The other part of that was that the statements of themselves were true, and that the only way to make this defamation, and therefore the only way that you could possibly make an accusation that there's any lie in those tweets is by the implication of the statements when put together, which he argues was essentially taken misconstrued by the plaintiff. Now, the thing is, I think he's dead on the money when it comes to the legal aspects of that. It's clear to me that what the message is that Funimation says, how that will be taken by the public in general. But the reality is, like, when you're going before the court and making that kind of argument, that the way the public took what Funimation said meant that they were calling Vic Mignogna a harasser. That's a really hard argument to make, and I don't really see a good justification for it unless you have other evidence to back it up. That's a big problem with that. So, let's go back. Judge says, okay, sit down real quick. Are those really the tweets that y'all are saying are defamation from them? Ty says, yes, but there's a lot of context. Judge says, okay, let them talk real quick. Ty says, sorry, let us talk? Judge says, yeah, let them talk for a second, because, I think the company has a right to do a press release. They didn't say he did anything wrong. Ty responds, okay, well, let me address that, Your Honor. Judge says, okay, what is defamatory about doing a press release and letting somebody go? Ty says, to answer your question, I'm going to have to back up a little bit. Judge responds, they have to be statements that you're suing for defamation for. What statements are you suing for? Ty says, we're suing for the implied statement that they said our investigation found Mignogna guilty of sexual misconduct, including sexual harassment, sexual assault, and pedophilia, because that was what was being talked about out there at the time. Judge says, I didn't see that. Ty says, okay, Judge responds, I don't see that statement. That's what I'm looking for. Ty responds, right. If I could back up with one point that's relevant to this whole discussion, Mignogna was terminated 11 or 12 days before they issued the statement. It was already known in the community that he had been terminated. Funimation didn't have to say a word. Judge responds, but there's no reason they can't either. Also, this just blows, I've had people argue this very point to me that, Funimation didn't have to come out and say anything, which is true, and there's a good argument that it was not professional of them to do what they did, but it's not a crime, it's not a tort, it's not unlawful. I never understood this part of the argument, why they would throw that in there, they didn't have to say those things. That's just, irrelevant. It doesn't make any sense as to why anyone would even go there. Ty continues, I agree, but here's the thing, Your Honor. Look, if I go across the street and I say I walked into my neighbor's house, I saw him interact with his kids, and I left and called CPS because I don't support child abuse, each of those statements could be true, and the four taken together could be defamatory. The problem Funimation has got is they came out and said we conducted an investigation, and that then they immediately and were terminating him. In the context of all those allegations that they immediately say, and we don't condone harassment of any kind. Then Rial chimes in and says, they came after some questioning. Rial chimes in and comes in and says, well, I'll give you the exact quote. It's in Funimation's motion, actually. Rial replies, there are dozens and dozens. Hold on a second. Let me get this. Anyway, Rial comes in and basically says there were a huge investigation. There were dozens and dozens of women that participated in it, and he was found guilty. Funimation never said a word, never said, no, wait a minute. That's not what we meant to imply. And it's not accurate. Oh, man. Ty is stumbling and bumbling all over the place with this one. He is not getting anything in order. He's not making... I could make a better argument than Ty here. I really could for this one. I could give a devil's sermon as to why Funimation is guilty of defamation here, if I really, really wanted to. Ty can't. Ty just is not capable of making the point that he wants to make here, that of how Funimation defamed Vic through an implied set of statements that, when taken on their own, are true, but when put together, leave people with the impression that, yeah, this guy's a sexual predator. That's the argument that Ty wants to make, but he just can't do it. This is not his specialty. He really shouldn't be here at the plaintiff's. He shouldn't be here. He should not be in this position. Like, I'll go into more into that at the end, but this is really, really bad. Judge responds, well, hold on. I mean, are we dealing with vicarious liability, or are we dealing with, Ty says, I'm doing Funimation's implied defamatory statement. Judge says, okay, then make a statement that's true. Ty says, correct, but the implied meaning is very defamatory. I mean, they did conduct an investigation because Mignogna testified to that. They did terminate him. That is not even in question. But the context of what was all going on is he is being accused of sexual assault. The thing is, they didn't need to do anything. The other studio just simply said, we've let him go, and done. They came along 11 days later and said, yeah, just to let everybody know, Judge interrupts. We let him go. Ty says, we let him go because we did an investigation and we don't condone harassment. Now, in their affidavits, it's kind of interesting. Funimation in their affidavits, they produce affidavits that say they're curiously non-specific about what they investigated. In their affidavits, Mika says, an investigation was conducted. Dembo, I don't know, who conducted the investigation, says, an investigation was conducted and he was found, and we thought he did inappropriate conduct. They didn't tweet that out. They didn't say, we found he was engaging in inappropriate conduct. The trial of messages, which you could see in Funimation's own pleadings, everybody that responded took Funimation's tweet as saying he had committed sexual assault in their investigation and found that out. What they actually investigated, according to Mr. Mignogna and according to a follow-up email he sent to Dembao, is Marshy alleged that he ate a jelly bean at a convention. Judge responds, I mean, I read that. I know. Ty says, well, he was accused of kissing a Funimation employee years ago one time, which he claims was consensual, and she never reported it otherwise. He was accused of making a pass at two fans at a convention that Funimation wasn't even involved with. Judge responds, that may have made a bad decision, in firing him. That may have been wrongful termination of a contract or wrongful termination of employment. Actually, Your Honor, I don't think so. Texas is an at-will state. Ty, the judge just threw you a big bone there. He just said that it might be, hey, you know what? Funimation might have fucked up in this other regard, not the regard you're talking about, but maybe that was wrongful termination or wrongful termination of a contract or something like that. And then Ty immediately just goes, nah, I'm not going to latch on to that. I'm not going to use that to my advantage. What he does instead is he says, well, we're not suing him for that. We're good boys. We're not suing Funimation for that. So we don't have to bring that up. Ty, what are you doing? this is like, okay, I'll tell you exactly like this, what this is like. This is like there's a tennis matchup between a pro and an amateur. The amateur's first game even, and the pro like all game is beating him like 22-0. And so the pro's like, okay, you know what? I feel bad about this. I'm gonna give you 10 extra points. And the amateur's like, nah, I'm good. Beat me 40-0. That's what happened here. Judge says, okay, that's my point, is that they have the right to make decisions, and they made a decision, and they posted it on the internet. There's nothing false about it. Ty says, no, it's the implication. Again, if I say I walked into your house, and that's true, Judge says, I know, you've said that, I heard you. And I say I called CPS, I heard you, I heard that. But am I wrong about that, Your Honor? That it's implied defamation? I mean, we keep hearing about context. This is the context. The man is being bombarded with accusations of sexual assault And in the middle of all this, totally unnecessarily, Funimation comes out and says, but you know what? We conducted an investigation, and we fired him, and we don't condone harassment. Real comes in and says, yeah, there was a bunch of, it's like the second or third tweet after that. It's still up there today. Not only that, Funimation never bothered to say that they've said in their pleadings, they say, oh, we never heard of Monica Real. She's an independent contractor, and we did not intend to at all imply that he was a sexual predator. They never one time said it in public. Mr. Villani said it here. They've said it all throughout their pleadings, but not one time did they tweet out, hey, clarification, our investigation did not find him guilty of sexual assault or anything like that. And so when you're defaming in a public forum like that, and then you refuse for 7 months to clarify that, no, that is not what we meant. When you're actually saying that in your legal case, you're actually saying it in the affidavits, you're saying it in your pleadings. I'm sorry, I believe that would meet the prima facie proof for implied defamation. And for those playing the drinking game, prima facie, said again by Ty Beard. Take another shot. I mean, the other curious thing is, Your Honor, this is not just a digression. This will tie into a conspiracy theme. But since we're talking about it, I mean, I won't... Alright. So Riel says she reported the jelly bean incident. Then they did the investigation, and Mignana gets fired. A few days later, she says, oh, yeah, and he also assaulted me in a hotel room in 2007. She testified in her deposition that she told Tammy Dembow of Funimation about that. Mr. Mignana says, no, I was not asked about that. Mr. Mignana provides an email that he followed up with Dembow that didn't mention that. So the evidence is that she didn't report an actual violent attempted sexual assault, but did report a jelly bean incident. Judge says, what if she lied to Funimation, but they just believed her? Can they not rely on that? Ty says, Your Honor, yeah. They could do what Rooster Teeth did, the other one. Judge says, yes. Ty says, the other studio said we investigated Vic and said we're done with him. You notice they're not a party to this lawsuit. They didn't come out and say to the public, we conducted an investigation and we terminated him. That's a huge difference. But if I could get back to my point about Real, this is important, trust me. Funimation in their pleadings has been extremely vague about what was investigated, and the reason is obvious. They are not going to tell what they specifically investigated, because if they did, it would show Real to be a liar, because they did not investigate that 2007 event, because it hadn't been reported yet. That also goes to evidence of conspiracy. Why do they care about this voice actor they've never heard of? Now, I'll get back to the defamation, but the tangent was necessary. I mean, like I said, if a reasonable inference... Okay, guys, reasonable inference again, take another shot. I mean, like I said, if the reasonable inference from we investigated him in the context of all these sexual assault allegations, and we fired him, and we don't support, we don't condone harassment. Great arguments by Ty Beard there. Judge says, okay, So it seems like you have a breach of contract against them also. Tai says, actually, Your Honor, I don't think we do. Like, again, a bone thrown his way, and he just doesn't take it. Judge says, okay, so what damages does he have from the firing? What damages does he have? Tai says, we're not complaining of the firing. We're complaining of the defamatory statement. Judge says, right. But that seems like that would go, but that seems like that would be the damage. Tai says, oh, I get your point. Well, what's funny here is he doesn't make that much money working for Funimation. Judge says, okay. Tai says, he makes money at the conventions meeting the characters. Judge says, so then is his tortious interference with the defamation? Tai says, well, the defamation is what caused the conventions to cancel him. Judge says, okay, so, but in statements that they made on the internet that were defamatory caused a tortious interference with an existing contract and a tortious interference with his prospective business relations. Tai responds, I think it's a rational inference. Okay, gotta take another shot. And if I was a drinking man, I'd probably be drinking not because of the game, but because Tai's just retarded. He doesn't know what this phrase means. Like, I think he thinks it's some kind of magic word like abracadabra that makes judges go, ooh, yes, I see your point. I'm going to go ahead and consider this for trial. Tai, what are you doing? Judge says, there are no specific damages coming from the defamation. There would be torturous interference part. Tai says, well, but no, I would say if Vic Mignogna testifies that he had conventions cancel him left and right. He did, I mean, Judge says, because of the statements. Tai says, yes. Judge says, okay, so he was told, I'm sorry, Your Honor. Tai apologizes, take another shot. I don't mean to interrupt. I think there is damages for defamation, which I don't think he has. Judge says, I think that there is damages for defamation, which I don't think he has any, but the defamation could cause him to lose a contract. I agree with that. That could happen. It could keep people from working for him in the future, and I think that those two causes of action that they torturously interfered with. Tai says, well, Your Honor, if the implied defamation occurred, it's defamation per se, and damages are presumed by law. That's, by the way, this is, just as an aside, this is wrong. That's not is that wrong? I don't know. Forget what I said. It could be, there's a high probability that this is not defamation per se at all. Continuing. That's even more so, they can't really, if the defamatory meanings that we've attached, which are our investigation, found him guilty of sexual misconduct, blah blah blah, we also believe that they imply he is guilty of that. And I think that they imply we endorse Monica's statement that the investigation involved dozens of women. Well, under the Khan case, Mr. Mignogna denied all these things. And at this stage of the game, that denial is deemed to be accurate. Well, Funimation knows what they investigated. If Mignogna's denial is legally sufficient to prove untruth, per the Khan case, then they have no truth defense. Because they know what they investigated. Legally, Mignogna said that they didn't investigate any of that. And that's not and I didn't do it. So the deal here is very simple. 7 months went by, and these folks left that tweet up without ever clarifying, oh, no, we didn't mean that. And the reason they didn't clarify is obvious. It was their termination of him that really gave the impetus. He got killed by two things. Okay, voice actors who worked with him accused him of these things. That's Marchi and Rial. Funimation, who employed him and did investigation, implied that it was for sexual assault. He had, and here's a good point too. Vic had worked for Funimation for 15 years. So losing that contract damaged him to some degree. But as I said, legally we don't. Judge responds, well, write down the number for me. Tai says, Your Honor, I don't have to because it's defamation per se. The damages are presumed. Judge says, okay. Tai Beard says, I mean, they are. He's being accused of sexual assault. That is defamation per se. I don't, off the top of my head, know what his earnings were from Funimation each year. They were probably on a scale of $30,000 to $40,000 a year, but that's speculation on my part. There's no way to, at this stage of the case, there is no way for us to be able to say what his economic damages are. Judge says, okay. Ty says, on a prima facie case. Drink up, get those shots ready, quaff another one down. Prima facie case again. Judge says, okay. How about civil conspiracy? Ty says, well, okay. Well, some of the same facts that I just said point to civil conspiracy. All right. They're curious protectiveness over Monica Rial, despite alleging that she's just some independent contractor that they don't know anything about. Judge responds, I mean, if you were running a company and you had a bunch of people come up to you, several people come up and say, this guy is sexually harassing me and assaulting me, I mean, don't you think that's in the company's interest to investigate, and then they fired him? And they're not in a conspiracy with the accusers. They're just trying to do what's good for their corporation. But you're just trying to say that anybody that came in and made an accusation is in a conspiracy with Funimation, when they're two distinct entities. Ty responds, well, I don't think I'm saying that, Your Honor. Judge responds, okay, then should I just dismiss that one, or do you want to keep going? Ty says, what I'm saying is, I think. Judge responds, who's your conspiracy with, then? Ty says, it's Rial and Funimation together. Judge replies, okay, that's what I just said Ty responds, oh. Judge says, the accuser's Rial, right? Ty says, yes. Judge says, and she goes and says he did this stuff to me, right? Ty responds, right. Judge says, and then they fire him. Ty says, right. Judge says, where's the conspiracy? I don't know, guys. Is this worse than suing Monica and Rial for gay ops in a Discord? You be the judge of that one. I'm not sure. Ty says, they came out. Okay. Number one, she said she mischaracterized the investigation as involving dozens and dozens of. Judge response, let's say she lied. She may have lied to them. Ty says, she lied in response to their tweet, Your Honor, and they never bothered to. Judge cuts him off. The problem is the intent has to be from Funimation that they want to fire him before she comes there. And they got together and planned a way to fire him. And that's not what happened. What happened is she came to Funimation and told him these things, and they fired him. They didn't plan to do it. Ty says, is the court, did I make it clear that they fired him 11 days before they announced that tweet, the defamatory tweet? Judge says, okay. Ty says, all right. And the defamatory tweet itself is a huge cause for the cancellations of his. Ty says, but we're on conspiracy right now. Ty replies, right. Judge says, and I'm asking you who the co-conspirators are with Funimation. Ty says, Monica Rial and Funimation at this point. Judge says, okay. But just because somebody comes in and makes a complaint doesn't mean it's a conspiracy. It's a process that you go through in HR. Ty says, there's another fact I need to get to. Judge says, well, get to it. Ty says, thank you. After the termination, Monica Rial exchanged some 17 emails with Funimation insiders talking about what do I say? What do I do? He's still doing this, griping about the fans. Again, this is supposedly some person that they have no real interest in. That she's just an independent contractor, and yet she testified in her deposition. She's close friends with Miss Calakenber. Calakenber? Apparently that's the phonetic pronunciation of the name. So, in her deposition, she testified in her deposition she's close friends with Miss So-and-so, who is one of the executives at Funimation. That's an awful lot of back and forth, griping about Vic, and planning stuff, and Tammy Denbao even getting involved. Judge says, you're talking about afterwards. Ty responds, I'm sorry? Okay, another shot, gotta take it for, I'm sorry. Apologizing to the judge. Judge responds, you're talking about planning afterwards? Ty says, yeah, after his termination. The judge responds, the conspiracy starts before that. Ty says, well, it very well could have. You can use inference. Judge replies, you've got to figure this stuff out. I'm serious. If they're going to have a conspiracy to get him fired, if that's what the conspiracy is, to get him fired for defamation, is that the conspiracy? Ty says, not just that. Is that one of them? Ty replies, that's one of them. Yet you have no evidence prior to him being fired that they had a plan. Well, we have circumstantial evidence. Okay. Which is permissible in this particular context. Okay. The emails and stuff you're talking about that happened afterwards. Well, here's the thing. We only know what they turned over to us. Again, I want to point out to the court, we have a motion to compel on file. We only have the emails they turned over to us. And they start after he got fired. Judge says, okay. Ty says, so I don't know what. Judge says, vicarious liability. You think that these people are in the course and scope of their business relationship at the time? Ty says, I think it's a rational inference. Absolutely. All right. Pour those glasses, take another shot. Judge replies, okay. Ty says, number one, they claim Funimation claims she is an independent contractor. They have never produced her employment contract. Mr. Villani says, actually, that is not true. It's been attached to the supplement affidavit that was filed with the court. Ty replies, well, okay, fair enough. Villani says, Ty says, but Villani continues, were provided to the court, so please don't misrepresent the facts. Ty says, I'm sorry. I was talking, Now, Ty said I'm sorry, but does this count? I'll let you decide. Optional shot taken for apologizing to Villani and possibly the court. So, you be the judge of that one. I was talking strictly about the TCPA motion. I'll correct that statement. But of course, all that was filed after the deadline, and we think that should have been stricken. So if the court takes that evidence in, then my statement is not correct. But if the court, holds them to their TCPA, judge says, then I can let you lie. Is that how that works? Oh, damn. Let me repeat that for you guys. So Ty says, so if the court takes that evidence in, then my statement is not correct. But if the court, holds them to their TCPA, judge replies, that I can let you lie? Is that how this works? Ty says, no. Judge says, well, I want the correct answer. Ty says, Your Honor, I actually don't know. I'm taking John's word for it. I don't think he would lie about it. Judge says, okay. John being the first name of the Funimation representative. Judge replies to that, okay. I don't want you to, Ty says, if he says it's in there, I believe him. I was focused on the TCPA motion to dismiss, not on extra evidence he filed later. I apologize. Judge says, you don't have any evidence that they are independent contractors, do you? Do you have any evidence that they aren't independent contractors? Ty says, depends on whether the court is going to allow them to supplement their. Judge says, Ty says, as the motion stands. Judge says, no, that's fine. Just say no. And Vic was an independent contractor, right? Ty replies, Your Honor, whether someone is an independent contractor is a question of law. I can't answer that question. Judge says, okay, don't answer it, then. Keep going as far as the agent. Ty says, all right. So if she is an employee, well, they are joined together, obviously, by what we've just talked about in a conspiracy. Judge replies, what if she is not an employee? Ty says, if she's not an employee, no, the vicarious liability doesn't attach. Judge says, okay. Ty Beard says, because, you have to be an employee as part of the vicarious liability. Judge says, and I need to figure this out as a matter of law. You said, correct? Ty says, well, it's a series of fact tests applied by the Texas Workforce Commission and the state of Texas. The Internal Revenue Service also applies like 20 different facts and tests. My own opinion is she probably is an employee, but that, Judge says, was your client an employee? Ty says, I kind of think he was. At will. At will, yeah. At will, but yeah. I think he was an employee. Because these contracts, my understanding is these contracts roll over automatically. Funimation exercised a great deal of control over what it is they did, and so forth and so on. Judge says, but they signed a contract. Tai says, yes. Judge says, for their period of time they worked and they didn't have to be renewed. Tai says, that's my understanding. Judge says, okay, that sounds like a contract. Okay, what else? Tai says, employees can have contracts. Judge says, sure they can. Alright, what else? Tai says, that's the vicarious liability. Judge says, okay. Tai says, and we have no evidence that she's not an employee, but she did work for them. And, again, they all acted in concert to ruin this guy. Again, a rational inference that they were vicariously liable is supportable. Take a shot. Another rational inference by Tai Beard. Judge responds, all right, would you like to respond to any of that? Villani says, may I? Judge says, yes. That's why I asked. Villani says, Your Honor, there is evidence in the record about the business relationships between Funimation. Judge says, you can sit down. Villani says, between Funimation and Miss Rial and Miss Marshy. And that evidence is the testimony contained in the affidavit of Karen Mika, who was filed with the court on July 1st. In, I believe, paragraph 4 or 6 of that affidavit, she talks about the business relationship between Funimation and its voice actors, and she confirms that they're independent contractors. They're not employees. And she also confirms that Funimation does not control what they put on their personal social media accounts. So there is evidence before the court of the business relationship. And also, Your Honor, on Tuesday, the court entered an order where he denied the objections to that particular evidence. So that evidence is before the court and establishes beyond a doubt that these people are not employees or acting within the scope of any agency relationship with Funimation when they go on their social media and tweet about Mr. Mignogna. So on the record before the court today, there is no possibility of vicarious liability, and chit-chat about interferences and circumstantial evidence that doesn't cut it under the statute, and we talked about clear and specific evidence. There was a question you just asked, Mr. Beard, about what the relationship between Mr. Mignogna and Funimation was. I point to the court to page 273 and 274 of Mr. Mignogna's deposition, where I asked him the question. Now, you said employment. At the time, you had an independent contractor agreement with Funimation. Is that right? And we're talking about at the time Mr. Mignogna was being terminated. He says, yes, sir. That answer is at page 274, line 2. I go on to ask, you weren't like a W-2 employee when they provide you benefits, you got paid by the hour. Answer, yes, sir. For the voice acting, fair? Yes, sir. So it's really not in dispute, and I think you can infer a lot of things, but those inferences have to be rational. It's not a rational inference to get from what he's talked about, Mr. Beard has talked about, to a vicarious liability. Judge says, okay. Villani continues. So he's not an employee, not within the course and scope, so that's my point. And on the defamation, Judge says, well, hold on. Villani says, pardon me. Judge responds, so he thinks that Funimation Real cooked up a conspiracy because she reported something to them, which may have been true or false, I don't know. But she reported that to Funimation, and Funimation acted upon that. Villani answers, there is no negligence claim related to we did a bad investigation. We did an investigation and we fired him, terminated him. He agreed that occurred, so our tweets about it are truthful. Judge says, he's saying you conspired with her, like you all had a plan with Real. Villani says, well, so that would be his burden to provide evidence to the court about, and he has not done that. And just the timing doesn't make any sense. Leaving aside the evidentiary problem and the fact that there's not a plea to support that particular allegation, I think I responded to that, to what he talked to the court about. Just one last thing. I don't think that there is cause of action for defamation by implication, by omission, which I think that's sort of convoluted way he's gotten around to recasting Funimation's tweets as defamatory to him, because I think he would agree. I think he would agree that both tweets on their face are truthful. We did investigate him, we did terminate him, and we do celebrate the anime community. Judge responds, but I think if your company tweeted that we found out we have a bunch of rapists working for us, tweet 2, we fired Vic. I mean, I think it could be defamation by implication there. And so even if you didn't say it, that's what they're trying to say is implied. And there is case law for implication. The judge is correct. There is a way in at least the state of Texas, probably other states as well, but there is a precedent for defamation by implication based on the number of true statements that may imply a false thing. But I don't see that working, and I'll comment about that at the end after I finish reading the transcript. Villani says, there is case law for implication. Judge says yes. Villani, I'll say two things. One is the word sexual assault or rapist doesn't occur in the second tweet. So I think it's not as clear as the court's example. And judge responds, no, Villani continues. But the second, the more important point is that in the context of people say things about public figures like Vic, in order for him to have a defamation claim, he's got to prove actual malice, which is the legal standard from New York versus Sullivan case we all learned about in law school. And that's a good burn from Villani. I got to give him that. Like, even I had to look up a lot of court cases to have a better understanding about a lot of this stuff. But New York versus Sullivan is a very, very rudimentary, easy one to know. I knew about that way beforehand. And I've studied, I've studied defamation stuff before. I've read up on defamation cases before this. But still, New York versus Sullivan is a very, very simple law case. If you're ever going to do any kind of, if you're ever going to get a law degree or you're going to do anything involving law, or even if you're just going to talk about defamation cases in general, you should be well aware of that case and why it's relevant to defamation standards. Anyway, continuing. He doesn't have any evidence of Funimation's state of mind in issuing those tweets. And the only evidence before the court to the contrary is that Funimation was responding to what was going on in the anime community just as Vic was. So that's all we have respect to the last part. I will say with respect to the tortious interference, I don't think the analysis is any different with Funimation as opposed to the others. Thank you, Your Honor. Tai says, Your Honor, may I reply? Judge says, sure. Tai says, okay. Number 1. Mr. Mignogna has not been established to be an expert on independent contractors. Judge says, oh, I don't think he is, either. Tai says, and the same is true for that matter of Funimation's self-serving statements as well. He's an independent contractor. Where is the proof of it? I mean, they could have attached his employment agreement to the TCPA motion. And, Your Honor, I really think that the court needs to find in our favor on the fact that those motions need to stand on their own. They don't get to keep adding evidence after the deadline. Judge says, I let you. Oh, man. Gotta keep consistency with your own standards there, buddy. That's basically what the judge is saying right there. Tai continues. So obviously, Mignogna is not an expert on what an independent contractor is. Neither are the executives that testify to that. Judge replies, but here's the thing. I mean, even if they are an employee, it doesn't necessarily mean that their conduct is imputed on the employer. Tai says, correct. Judge says, I mean, not all your conduct would be imputed on the employer anyway, so I don't know if it's that big of a deal one way or the other. Tai says, well, it's just that you have to be an employee for the vicarious liability. Judge responds, I understand that, but I could still find that their actions were not in the course and scope of their employment. Tai says, right. Judge says, and so it doesn't matter. Tai responds, you could find that way, yes, Your Honor. Judge says, and I don't know if doing voice acting requires you to post stuff on the internet that's defamatory about people. I mean, is that part of her Funimation contract that she's supposed to post defamatory stuff? Or is that something that would deviate from what she is supposed to do? Tai responds, well, if Funimation is actively defending this guy, and she's posting out, and she's an employee, I think it's a rational inference. Okay, guys, take another shot for those of you playing the drinking game. That she's acting in the scope of her employment. You know, we don't condone any kind of harassment or threatening behavior, of course. You made that point, and I don't think it's Judge's response. Yeah, I mean, I understand that. But the recourse is to fire her. I mean, if she's doing something wrong, they should fire her, and the complaint should be made by her. But what you're saying is that anything she does outside of her voice acting, they're on the hook for because she did something that is an intentional tort, right? Ty responds, yes. Judge responds, outside the course and scope of her employment. Ty responds, I concede to that point. Judge says, okay, so you're saying part of her course and scope of employment is the intentional tort by publishing stuff on the internet. Ty responds, Monica's deposition, she said that tweeting and other promotional work was part of her job. Judge says, okay. Ty says, now was it tweeting about Vic Mignogna? I don't know how far down you sliced that. Judge says, I'll bet it doesn't say about Vic Mignogna in there. Again, Judge Chupp, he's good at those burns. Really good at them. Ty says, I bet it doesn't either. Judge replies, but I think we're making a big deal over the employee or independent contractor. I don't think it matters one way or the other. But I don't think she was acting in the course and scope. Oh, anyway, tweeting bad stuff about. Ty interrupts. But, Your Honor, is it a rational inference that she could have been? Take another shot for rational inference from Ty Beard. Judge says, no, you made a lot of things you think are rational inferences, and they're not. Ty says, well, I've got to get it, you know? Yes. As far as Mr. Villani's statement, there was that we're trying to do defamation by omission. That's not at all what I've offered the evidence for. No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that your argument against them is defamation by implication. Ty says, yes, sir. The omission goes to the conspiracy aspect. That by allowing her statements to stand and not clarifying anything, they participated in this conspiracy because they gave the conspiracy the credibility it really needed. Vic had allegations in the past, but he never had a single convention, not one ever, cancel him until this year. The big difference was the people who worked close to him and the companies he worked for before terminated. We didn't sue Rooster Teeth because all Rooster Teeth said was he was terminated. All Rooster Teeth said was we terminated him. And that's all Funimation said initially. On the 26th of January, they said we terminated him. That was it. If they had stopped there, we wouldn't be in this lawsuit with him. It was that extra step. But I submit that extra step also indicates a conspiracy and collusion to destroy this guy. At least I think it's rational to infer that. That counts. Take another shot. And you know, as far as Mr. Villani's other statements about there's just no that the statements are true, but we've gone over that ground already. You make two completely true statements that together are defamatory. That's defamation by implication. So that's, I think, all I've got on vicarious liability, Your Honor. Judge says, okay. I'm dismissing the tortious interference with existing contract, tortious interference with constructive business relations, civil conspiracy, and vicarious liability. I'm going to rule on the defamation for Funimation Productions, the defamation for Monica Rial, and the civil conspiracy for her. And I'll rule on the defamation of Ronald Toye and the civil conspiracy on him. So that's where we're at. And I have 30 days from today, I guess, to do something or they're overruled, right? Villani says, yes, sir. Judge says, okay. Villani says, thank you, Your Honor. Judge says, y'all have a good day. And that is the very end of the proceedings. Okay, we made it through all that. Here's my take on the whole thing. Ty's an idiot. Ty's a retard. Ty doesn't know what he's doing. Nick picked that guy. Nick chose him. And he told everyone throughout this case that, these are some good arguments for Ty to have. Nick, every single argument that Ty brought up, Nick talked about at some point. Every single one without fail. If you're going to tell me that Nick and Ty are not either one of two things is going on. Either Ty's listening to Nick's streams for tips, or Nick and Ty are actively discussing the case and working together. And you know what? I wasn't born yesterday, so I'm going with that latter one. I'm going to say right now that if Ty's or Nick's DMs got leaked or something like that, or there was a big leak involving them in like a DM group or Discord chat or something like that, or maybe some other platform that got leaked, it would show that. I'm willing to bet money on that. Like, actually, no, I'm not a betting man. But if I was, I would bet money on it. Like, that's the thing. There's no doubt in my mind that Nick is pushing Ty along. And let's just say that's wrong for sake of argument. Let's just say, John, that's too tinfoil for me. Okay. The fact of the matter is, Nick still picked this idiot who has only experience in estate law and estate planning to oversee a defamation case that he utterly dropped the ball on, and his entire firm couldn't help him with. And all that money that he got and gathered up couldn't help him with either. Now, what does this mean? Well, Nick is an idiot. Nick is either malicious as part of a con job, but let's just say he isn't. Let's just say that, for sake of argument, that Nick picked him out and he didn't know any better. He's just an idiot. Because that's the only other alternative. Nick didn't know what he was doing. Why didn't Nick get outside consultation about this? Why didn't he get another lawyer or two to give their opinions on who would be best to represent the case? Because that's the thing with lawyers. Lawyers talk to each other all the time. There's no reason that Nick should have gone beyond his field of knowledge, which, by the way, as far as I know, Nick has no experience on defamation law. He has no experience in civil law. The court records that have come out about Nick have all been him acting as a defense attorney in criminal court. Now, if there's any evidence to the contrary of that, please send it my way so I'm informed about that. But there's no evidence about that. None. And the reality is, like, you're taking this guy who is willing to talk beyond his knowledge to make up stuff to the point where a sovereign citizen might blush and just take his word for it. And there's just so many people that still defend him this day, like he's some good boy. But he's not. He really isn't. Okay. A couple other things. Something I mentioned before. Also, there were some comments in the chat I wanted to read over. Like, not every single one, but there's some good ones that I didn't get to because I wanted to get through it. But before I do that, the thing about defamation by implication, I think the reason that's not going to work is, let's presume that there was defamation by implication, as Ty put it. The problem with that is, all that Funimation has to do is just say, we were telling the truth about that. Because harassment doesn't have to be defined as a legal standard thing. Like, oh, you have to show criminal cases, or you have to show this level of burden of proof. It doesn't have to be that way. Companies make policies dealing with harassment that extends to things that are what the law wouldn't consider as harassment all the time. And this is not illegal. And I'm not just talking social media, I'm talking HR companies, which should be the relevant business here. So if the implication is Vic Mignogna was fired due to harassment, based on their own investigation, that would be true. Based on the stuff that Vic Mignogna has admitted to before and after this lawsuit, that would be true. And there'd be no getting around that. There'd be no way to make a defamation case based on that defamation by implication, quote unquote. So that's why I don't think that one will particularly work. Not because defamation by implication is not a thing, but because the implication is about a truthful statement, or at least one that can't be proven to be false, at the very least. So I'll just read through some stuff in the chat here. Let's see. Ethan Van Shriver is basically the patron saint of Comicsgate. He's been pissing off pretty much the same crowd of people at SJWs in order to sell a comic book that's now a year late. Is it just 1 year late? Like, was I mistaken about that? If I was, then I shouldn't have said years, so I'll look that up. Mr. Bloodedge says, I don't know. I never understood these Gates movements. I'll get into more of that another time. I ranted a bit about that in the last stream. I think that's just something that needs more. I'll talk about that later, but basically, there's a lot of manipulation involved with that, and there's a lot of people pushing agendas in particular communities when it comes to that. Let's see. Going down a bit. Do you have any information that Ty Beard is also representing Todd Haberkorn and Anime Matsuri? I know that Ty has been taking other cases based on individuals or groups that are related to this whole Vic Mignogna thing, but I don't know much more than that. I know he's representing that umbrella guy for some ungodly reason. Look, if you've hired Ty Beard as a lawyer, fire him. Cease doing business with him. He will turn your case into this, okay? I don't even like you guys, but you know what? Those guys referring to the people that have allegedly taken up contracts with Ty Beard, like Tug or... actually, I don't even know what Anime Matsuri is, so I take that back. I don't even know. Some of these people I just don't know. But even to the ones that I don't like Tug, don't fall for this grift. Don't fall for whatever he's pushing. Ty Beard said that he had this case in the bag, and he said even the dumbest law firm of Texas could win this case. Is this what winning looks like, guys? I don't know, guy. I don't think this is what winning looks like at all. What else is there? I'd heard of Rikita, but that's because of shit Ethan Ralph had said. Yeah, that's because Nick Rikita embedded himself in the blood sports community for quite a while there before he shat on it. Because he was going around from community to community to build up his audience, and part of that was getting on that blood sports train. That's why he stepped in to basically expose Donga as a huge liar and a fraud. That was the whole point of that. It was to gather an audience. That's been Nick's goal since the beginning of this. He doesn't care for any of the he doesn't really care for any of the things he gets involved in. He just wants he just wants an audience, any audience, paying attention to him. That's all he wants. Do you have any information that Ty Beard is also represent? Oh yeah, we read that. Let's see. Vic's legal fees alone will probably eat the entire GoFundMe, and he's going against 3 legal teams and will pay a percentage of fees based on whether or he wins all or only some of them. Yeah, Vic is fucked. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. Vic is going to end up paying a lot of money to these people, and it's all because a couple of lawyers got in his head that it would be a good idea to sue them, and they didn't tell him about the consequences at all. And if they did tell him about the potential consequences about this case, then he probably wouldn't have gone this direction. And if they appeal this thing, that's going to be more fees that Vic is going to have to pay. So, this is not a good... So yeah, Vic is fucked. Okay. Going down a bit. Looking for more insightful comments. I would stress that Nick is not an impartial reporter on this topic. 100% correct. Nick has both a financial and an emotional bias in this thing. He will report the story as favorably to his cause as much as possible, with little to no regard to what the facts of the matter are, or little care, or even knowledge of what the law is for that matter. Because honestly, I think that Nick, when it comes to law, he's not as knowledgeable as he wants you to believe he is. All right, looking through some more here. Okay. So what did the other 3 lawyers on Ty's side while he floundered like this? Hasu came in and tried to help Ty here and there at the beginning, but then he went quiet as the proceedings went on. The other 2, I didn't know they were there. Someone had to point that out on Twitter. So, yeah. I guess they were there just to raise the costs of Ty's paycheck or to his law firm. He trolls Ty Beard at certain moments, mocks him in his mind-blowing inadequacy to wrap his mind to understand anything about the whole thing, and how it's perceived to be how it's perceived by a sane individual. It's amazing. Yeah, I would say that's what the judge was doing for sure. At least part of the time. But fear the beard, am I right? Fear the beard. Hashtag that. The only person that should fear the beard is his own client. I agree. Keep in mind that Ty is the lawyer who tried to claim it's defamation if you call someone a piece of shit on Twitter, because that person is technically not actually made of fecal matter. Yeah, Ty did claim that. I mean, Ty is very, very, very exceptional as far as lawyers go. Damn it, Nick Rekieta, we lost the case again. I wonder if Nick will ever say that meme ever again after this. I wonder if he'll just try to quietly shove that aside, just like Fear the Beard has been quietly shoved aside. I'm pretty sure that Nick's not going to be making that joke. Nick's not going to be laughing at it either. Nick's going to be kicking himself every day that he made that joke. I am going to enjoy saying it, though. I am going to immensely, immensely enjoy drinking his tears as Vic Mignogna pays through the nose to these people. Not because Vic Mignogna suffers, but because, hey, people tried to warn Nick. People tried to warn Ty. But they decided to make fools of themselves, so rip. I hope that law firm I hope the $250,000 was worth it. Just remember, no refunds. Caesar says, often, if not always, instead of moving forward on any claims, Ty keeps arguing childishly with the judge on ridiculous points that don't matter or just plain painfully wrong in his argumentation, and keeps getting wrecked again and again. Yeah, that happened a lot during there. That is an accurate summation to a lot of Ty's failings and arguments in this case. Damian Schubert says, one great way to make friends with the judge is to try to reopen discussions about things the judge has already ruled on. Good point. Sarcasm is noted, and in that sarcasm, yeah, there's a good point there. Hey man, stop being a hater and be a masturbator. I have some great hentai to look up if you want to hear. No, I'm not. No, you can take your degenerate stuff and shove it. No, thank you. Okay, down a bit. That was what he said at a stream with his first impression of the hearing. I'm sure he'll ride that one to the end. Not sure what he's referring to there. Going down a bit. Okay. So can Vic claim ineffective counsel and get the case redo the trial? I don't know. I'll have to look into it. I remember Greg Doucette commenting on that a bit, but it seems inconclusive. I don't know. Although Damien Schubert in chat says, I don't believe so. You can try the same case twice. You can't try the same case twice. Not accurate. In criminal court, you can't try the same case twice. In civil court, you actually can, under certain conditions. There may be pathways for appeal for Ty, but Law Twitter has not been impressed by any grounds for appeal yet. Yeah, that last part's true, though. Like, the appeal, I don't believe that any of this will be appealed at all, whatever. If you think about it, it would be really bad if rich assholes could sue people they don't like for bullshit reasons infinitely. Yeah, I agree with that. At some point, a lawyer said basically that Vic couldn't file a suit against these people for any reasons related to these events, meaning that Vic can't sue Funimation for wrongful termination. Yeah, like, honestly, I don't think he can. I don't think it was ever a realistic option for him. Like, there's different arguments about, I think it's going to be speculated henceforth about if a competent lawyer could actually win these cases. I'm going to make the argument that no, or probably not. Maybe someone could show cases where, yeah, this strategy worked or something like that. And there were definitely things that Ty could have done at this hearing that would have been better. There's definitely things that Ty could have done at the last hearing that could have been better. There's things that Ty could have done at the depositions that could have been better. All the filings Ty could have done. Everything Ty did, he could have done better. So when you have someone that incompetent, how do you judge the value of the case itself? It really colors commentary, criticism of it, because this guy is such a failure at what he does. So, I'm kind of hoping, like, some people are saying this will be, like, a case that is looked up and studied in law school for generations. I kind of hope that is the case. I really do, because that'd be so funny. Just, like, people going to law school years later, reading about this dumb, goofy internet shit, and, like, figuring out, okay, what could have Ty Beer done differently to win the case? That'd be fun. I have heard that, but I am pretty unfamiliar with these cases. Decent. Okay. Skip that one. Okay. I think that's about it. Oh, here's another one. Apparently, he's normally an estates lawyer and wills and stuff, and doesn't litigate or typically handle defamation. There's no evidence at all, whatever. I'm just going to say it. Ty Beard has never, ever litigated a case in his life, at least not any to my knowledge. Maybe something in criminal court, maybe something in some other civil court that's unrelated to defamation, maybe. But the way he acts and behaves at court in front of a judge in this manner leads me to believe that he never did. Actually, let me rephrase that, because there's a good chance he did appear in civil court at some point or another, or criminal court at one point or another. Defamation or torts. I'm gonna say never. If there's proof out there that proves me wrong, hey, I'll accept that. But based on all the evidence, which there's none, and based on like everything I've seen, this guy is completely inexperienced. Joe Usser says, but with this showing, it sounds like he doesn't even have a basic grasp of the law in general. Agreed. Okay. Scroll down a bit. Okay, see some new comments in the chat. Let's see. Blood Edge says, to be honest, I think Vic would have just stuck to counseling like he said he would before. Yeah, that's something I've pointed out. Like, he said that, but he never went through with it. Like, I know people like Vic for some reason, but I never found any of his, like, going back in his apologies, I don't find them genuine. I don't. Like, you read through what he said on Twitter, you watch his videos when he's gone up to these crowds and stuff like that, they don't make any sense. They're not, like, they don't make sense. Not from a PR perspective, they don't make sense from from a sincere place of authenticity perspective either. And you can notice that Vic kind of like goes and doesn't change his tune like before and after. So I mean, hey, maybe there's some other aspects to Vic that I just don't know about, but I mean, I know people have had positive experiences with the guy, but at the end of the day, I just, the guy comes across as someone that's just in it for the money and is a creepy weirdo. And there's like a whole bunch of stuff about that I might get into, but I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think Vic should get help. What else do we have here? Nick uses the argument that he's still a lawyer. Does that count for anything in your opinion? In Nick's case, no. And the reason why in Nick's case it doesn't count is Nick has proven over and over for a few reasons. One, Nick has bullshitted so many times in this case that, you know, his credential, it discredits his credentials. Two, his credentials are in the state of Minnesota for particular things involving criminal law. Small time chicken shit defense attorney type stuff that the only records that I have on him right now show. And three, he's not a Texas lawyer. He's a Minnesota lawyer. Like, he doesn't have this vast experience that he tries to make himself out to be. So no, in Nick's particular case, the I'm a lawyer thing. No. I'm not gonna buy Nick's. I don't care how compelling or logical Nick's arguments are. What I want to see from Nick when he makes arguments when it comes to case law, particularly with the Vic Mignogna case, which again he has an extremely large, which he is extremely biased in. I want to hear Nick cite case law to demonstrate his points. If he doesn't do that, just ignore the argument entirely from him. That'd be my recommendation. Not everything Nick says is wrong. I want to make that clear. There are times when Nick is correct, particularly when he's not talking about this. But most of the time, yeah, there's a pretty good chance he's wrong, especially if he's in an argument with another lawyer about it, especially if he's getting emotional about it, especially if he's not citing any sources whatsoever. And also be careful of the sources he does cite, because a lot of times he takes them out of context and applies them in ways that they would never get applied. And also remember that Nick loves to play the lie of omission game where, hey, if I don't mention something, it didn't happen. It's kind of sad that even though I'm not a law student, I could still tell that Ty is incompetent. Agreed. Like that's another thing. You don't need to be a lawyer to have an opinion on things. Like, I don't know who died and made that a rule. Like, you could still say, hey, that guy's argument was shit, even if he's a lawyer. Like, just because you have credentials doesn't mean that you're good. And in Ty's case, it's not even an opinion. It's a fact that Ty fucked up completely. Like, yeah, there were some other mistakes by a couple lawyers here and there, for sure. But Ty was just, like, an embarrassment. I mean, like the lowest rung on the ladder of all lawyers of all time, potentially. Okay, a couple things here. Like he deadass admitted that he wasn't listening to the judge at one point. Yeah, like that. Seriously. Like all you had to do, like, okay, there's people that have a tendency to not listen to someone or something like that. I get it. It happens. Everyone goes through that at least once in their life. Don't admit it. Not when you're prosecuting a case. All you'd have to do is just say, yeah, I guess you did say that or whatever. Don't flat out admit that you're not listening. I mean, come on. Ty and Nick could and should have emphasized to Vic to either say nothing when asked about the hair pulling incident or to answer he caressed her hair. Something that I don't know. Like, I think he should have not mentioned like any touching of the hair whatsoever. But yeah, that would have been a better strategy. What you just said there in the deposition for sure. Laro says, yeah, Vic started apologizing for his behavior, but now he's all, I don't care about people getting offended. It's really interesting to see that change. Yeah, that's real funny, isn't it? Like, this is why the apologies, like, that's why the apologies are just disingenuous. It's because he just completely walked back on them entirely. Like, either he did that to save his own ass or, like, that's all. No, actually, no. I don't even have to speculate about that. He did that because he hired a PR team that told him to say those things. And then once he got these lawyer contacts, he decided to, fuck it, I'm going to go with this option instead. So, yeah, those apologies were insincere, and they are a mark against his character, not in favor of him. Blood Edge says, I actually met Vic and Monica at the same convention, so I won't lie, this whole situation sucked for me for that reason, I think. But now I just can't stop laughing at Ty. I mean, yeah, honestly, I think that's what should be the takeaway, instead of, like, looking at the negative things that has happened here. I mean, every once in a while, every once in a while, like, one thing I like about what Miniker does is that his whole shtick is, I just want to laugh at retarded shit on the internet. It could be someone fucking up. It could be someone doing this or that or the other thing. And yeah, Miniker does go into other topics and stuff like that. But his main bread and butter, make fun of dumb shit on the internet. There's a time and a place for it, and everyone should be laughing at Ty. Because Ty fucked up in a very spectacular way. And it's funny. So, yeah, I agree with that. And Joe Usser asks, how does Nick financially benefit from this case? Promotion. He uses the GoFundMe to promote himself, to get more people, more eyeballs on his screen. He creates more by creating the lawsuit, because this is Nick's Frankenstein. He made the lawsuit a reality. By the lawsuit existing, by perpetuating it, by keeping it going, by keeping everyone hyped about it, more people wanted to know what it's about. The number one place to go to it is Nick's stream. They go to it, he gets more viewership, his numbers go up, he gets more clicks on his videos, he gets more advertising revenue, he gets more merchandising purchased, and he gets more super chat money. Okay, last question. Do you think it would have been in Vic's best interest to, instead of this lawsuit, opt to get his own dubbing studio? Vic Mignogna creating something would have been a better option than the lawsuit. I don't know if, I don't think he could compete with a dubbing studio, but I think that general sentiment of Vic Mignogna creating something, furthering his career a different direction, taking that money and doing something else other than suing people, and instead creating something, would have been a better strategy for Vic. And I think that at the end of that, everyone would like there's so many different ways that could have gone, and yeah, that would have been a better option. All right. So on that note, I'm gonna end the stream here. Tomorrow, I want to talk about some of the reactions to this lawsuit, like particularly, our friends over in Discord, in Nick's Discord, where nothing nefarious ever happened at Discord, nothing bad ever happened. There was no doxing, no doxers. Just ignore all the evidence. That's all. That's something John Kelly said. Don't pay attention to him. Yeah, we're gonna look at how they reacted to this in real time, and that'll be fun. Also, we're going to look at some comments that Nick said about the case after this happened, and I'm going to have that up tomorrow at some point. Don't know when. It'll probably be a bit late, but we'll see. All right, that was the show for tonight. I hope you all found this entertaining, maybe enlightening. But in any event, you all have a good night, and peace out.